Welcome to the show. It's IB Nation Sports Talk, and it's Mailbag night. That's Vince D'Addario with a big cheese-eating grin on his face. John Steyer's right here. You look very preppy kind of today.
It depends on my mood in the morning, how I want to kind of attack the day. You know what I mean? But it's really all just looking forward to casual Fridays. And, now that I'm not a gym teacher anymore, it's not casual every day. It's just casual Friday. So,
Yes.
Gotta wear the nice pants and the whole thing.
I think discerning fans like Salty Virginia Peanuts should probably have the patterns figured out by now. If it's a Jesse show, Tuesdays, Thursdays, we start closer to 6 o'clock. If it's Monday, Wednesday, when are we starting later?
You're not wrong. I don't even have anything. I can't even back that up because it's true. It's accurate.
That's exactly right.
You've known me for too long. And sometimes I'm rolling right in from work or whatever. Today, just sitting on the couch. And I look at it's time to go downstairs. Oh, got to get a water. Go to the bathroom. And here we are. Hey, how you doing? I had nothing. I could have gotten up 3 minutes earlier.
That's right.
Nothing was stopping me.
But you didn't.
Nope.
I've got a little frog in my throat today, so hopefully it passes here. It's not it's just for whatever reason, it's just, catching there. So, hey, it's mailbag night. Yeah, so baby. We've got a few questions start up and ready to go. Roll some more in if you would, and we will get to them. Salty was the first one here, and he's filled the queue up with all kinds of
a lot of fill in the blanks
questions. Yeah, I know. He's Salty wants to take over rapid fire. I think the way it's going.
I mean, hey,
right now.
You can always take.
Welcome to We Are Not Marshall. Glad you can still join us for this show. Hope work treats you better sometime soon. I had an appointment with my my heart guy today, and I don't know if you remember. He's the guy who put in my pacemaker back the day before the Ohio State game. But I don't know if you remember me telling the story about while I was coming out of the anesthesia, we were in the middle of a conversation about Notre Dame football. We were rating each of the past, Bob Davie, he was this, Charlie Weiss, he was that, he thought Tyrone Willingham deserved more time. I was like, I had enough of Tyrone.
So did I.
We
3 years was plenty.
Yeah.
From a football standpoint. He was a nice guy. He's a nice guy, but 3 years was enough from a football standpoint.
Yeah. Nice guy, better golfer.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so today, he walks in, he's like, Irish breakdown. Yeah. So we get into this whole thing about Irish breakdown and, explaining the origins. He's like, now there's all of you guys who do these shows. Is there one main guy? And I'm like, well, that would be Brian. He's like, oh, Brian Driscoll. Yeah. Brian Driscoll. Then he was like, so now Jesse Steyers, is he related to you? Yeah, he's my son. Yeah, and he lives in Cleveland. Yeah.
He's been watching.
He's watching all the time because he's like, you're a Kansas guy. Jesse lives in Cleveland, and Vince is at Penn and all this.
Wow.
Stuff. So yeah,
I'm impressed.
He's got the bios on everybody, but excuse me again. Big Notre Dame football fan. He started in on the Bob Davie bashing today. I had absolutely no problem with that. Talking about how Bob Davie screwed up the end of the season one year against USC and all this different stuff. And I'm like, yeah.
Bob Davie screwed up blank. I mean, there's a myriad of things that you could put there. So
that's right.
A myriad.
Appreciate it, D-Rock. Do appreciate it for sure. So, but so things going well. They're going to do another. They can't figure out what caused all this stuff.
Really?
So they're going to do this. They're going to do this catheter thing where they send a thing up through the vein in my arm and down into my heart and look and see if there are blockages. I just had this stress test yesterday. Finally had the stress test and all that stuff and came back clean.
There you go.
That's why they're baffled with what caused me to need this. Yeah.
Well, because you're a healthy guy. I mean, you work out.
For the most part, yeah.
I was baffled by it myself.
I know.
Totally took me by surprise.
I know.
The whole situation.
I mean, look at Tim Priester. He looks, more fit than me. And, Tim had worse problems than I did.
I didn't even know that.
So,
I didn't even realize
you
that.
didn't?
No, when was
It's
that?
been I think it's been about 4 years ago. He had a heart attack before a game.
No
And
kidding. Maybe
yeah,
I
and
did
Michael
know that.
Birch, the SID, was there and, had
Yeah,
to
it was at the press box, right? It was in the press box,
I
wasn't
think
it?
so, either at the press box or, like getting ready to go up in the press box or something
Yeah,
like
okay.
that.
It's starting to ring a bell. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah. So I might have to miss a show here within a couple of weeks to, to go do another test because they said I'm going to go in the afternoon. There's always a chance I might have to spend the night and all that kind of jazz. So
Gotcha.
we're real excited about that.
Hospital food. Let's do it.
Oh, yeah. But it's free food. So, like Vince, my buddy
Free
Vince will
food is
show up
good
with his
food, buddy.
kids.
Yeah, that's right.
Can we get some puddings?
Where are the mini cereals? Fill these kids up. Let's go.
That's right. That's right. All right. I wanted to start since Salty was here and he was throwing the questions in the queue. I wanted to start with at least one of his questions. I thought this was a good one. Buy or sell? CJ Williams, after decommitting late and saying no decent wide receiver should go to Notre Dame, may now transfer from USC to Notre Dame to play wide receiver.
I will never, I shouldn't say never. Most of the time, I'm all about enhancing the roster, right? I mean, the goal at Notre Dame is to win a national championship. You do that by enhancing your roster, bringing in the best guys available, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If he decides to come to Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman and Tommy Rees and Chancey Stuckey, and they're all on board with it, okay, fine. If he decides to go someplace else, I will lose 0 seconds of sleep on the whole thing. Like, if you don't want to, then don't. I mean, the last time I talked to Brian, Notre Dame's not even the lead for him. He doesn't think that he's going to come. Maybe that changes over the next couple of days. Definitely possible. I guess I think it's a bit of a sell. I think that they've recruited guys that are like him in the next recruiting class. And so those guys have 4 years of eligibility left. I wouldn't even say he has a ton of experience. I think he has like 3 catches for like 45 yards or something like that at USC. So it's not like he's coming in with a bunch of experience. So if you're making me choose buy or sell, I'll sell it. But if he comes, okay, that means he passed all of the, the criteria to get in and everything as far as, the coaches being happy with him. I'm not talking about his academics,
right?
But like, I don't know. I'm like lukewarm about the whole situation.
Yeah, I was from the beginning as well. And, he's obviously looking for more opportunity. God, that frog will just not go away. He's looking for more opportunity, which is why he would come here. The problem becomes, and like you're saying, there are similar bodied guys that they'll have. And the problem becomes if he's not out there and he's not producing right away and he's, is at the very least not playing right away, then does that become, like a locker room issue, all those kind of things because of the past that he has.
Sure.
So he's not someone that I would bend over backwards to try to bring in because he's obviously got some talent, but like you said, there's enough other talent and it's not like he's so much more experienced that it's like, oh, you just plop him in and he's going to go right away. I think that the kid from Virginia Tech, Caleb Smith, a lot more experience than CJ Williams.
Oh, yeah.
So I think they're much better off with him.
Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about it. And the locker room thing is real. I mean, he was at USC for a semester. I mean, and then he already cut bait to leave. That's a red flag. I mean, that's not necessarily somebody that you want to bring in to this locker room. I think they did a decent job of purging some of the issues. And I think they're continuing to do so, but you don't want to invite that in either. So it's a fine line. Like, they're going to have to really do their due diligence on bringing him in if he wants to come. I mean, I know they invited him on campus. It's an official visit and all that, but just because he's visiting doesn't mean he's a take either. So, I mean, I think they're going to have to do their due diligence on this one.
Yeah, I agree. And, maybe some of that comes with this visit, but I assume they'll find a lot out just
I
about
agree. Yeah,
where
I
he
agree.
is, mentally and all that kind of stuff. Chi-Town, Irish Chi-Town. How does having a veteran quarterback like Sam Hartman make the rest of the offense better? Also, do you actually think Tyler has a legitimate shot to beat out Sam Hartman?
Well, I'll take the second part first. Yes, he's got a legitimate shot to beat out Sam Hartman. I think it is going to be a legitimate competition. Absolutely. Will he? Is he the favorite? I don't think he's the favorite. I mean, if we're going to like put odds on it or whatever, we're in a betting atmosphere, right? So I think Sam Hartman is the favorite to win the starting job.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Say they're playing relatively equally in
Okay.
camp and whatever. So they're pretty equal.
Yeah.
Is equal does equal in whatever they're doing, does that mean Sam Hartman has the lead? Does Tyler Buchner have to be head and shoulders better, do you think, than Sam Hartman in camp to beat him out?
I'm going to say yes, because you have to look for something to differentiate, right?
Mm-hmm.
If everything football-wise is equal, okay, let's say they're completing the same percentage of passes, they're, operating the offense the same way, they're spreading the ball around, all of those different things, right? I think you give the edge to Sam Hartman because of all of his experience. I think that's the tick that gets him, that starting spot. I do.
The main reason that attracted you to him to begin with.
Absolutely. So I think he does need to be head and shoulder. Now, part of that head and shoulders above would be the aspect of running, and that's what he brings to the table that Sam Hartman doesn't, obviously. So I mean, that would be part of the equation. But if all of those things are equal, then I think you give Sam Hartman the nod, to be honest. And look, Tyler Buchner is a better athlete than Sam Hartman. If he can put it all together, if he can up his his completion percentage and all those different things, then Tyler Buchner could be a better quarterback, But that's going to be really tough to do between now and August 26th or whenever that game is. So, yeah, I think the edge would go to Hartman just because of the experience.
I concur. Because again, the reason you went out and got a quarterback like this was for experience. You needed a more experienced quarterback because the way this season played out, they were legitimately a college football playoff. We've talked before. Like if Jack Cohn is on this team, they're most likely going into November in competition for being in the college football playoff.
Right.
Even if you still have the loss to Ohio State, who knows? Maybe they managed to beat Ohio State with an experienced quarterback like Jack Cohn right away. Experience is why you got this guy, though. And if the play on the field in camp is equal, then I do think Sam Hartman gets the job because he is the more experienced quarterback, because you're not going to do your program any favors if you bring in a guy like this, a sixth-year guy, who came here for a specific reason as well, to help boost his draft stock and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
You're not going to do yourself any favors by bringing that guy in, and then, here's Tyler Buchner. Well, they're fairly even, so our guy gets the job. That kind of thing. So
Absolutely.
I think Tyler Buchner, it's kind of like you've got to knock out the champ, in boxing or whatever. It's like if you're Tyler Buchner, you got to get a knockout punch, I think, in camp to win the job.
I agree, because I think they're going in, and even though, because I said before the bowl game, this is the first opportunity Tyler Buchner is going to have to make an impression on the quarterback competition for 23. I think he made a good impression overall, right? But I still think, you bring in Sam Hartman, I still think he's trailing going into the competition. So he doesn't just have to gain ground to even it up. He needs to gain ground and bypass.
Yeah.
And that's going to be tough. I mean, that's a tall order. Could it happen? Absolutely, it could happen. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't. I think Sam Hartman's going to end up being the starter because he's got that leg up at the moment. It's going to be, like I said, it's going to be tough. Can it happen? Sure.
I agree. So Salty asks, which is better for Buchner, win the starting role in 23 or have another year to develop watching Hartman and start in 24, 25?
It depends on how you look at it, right? I mean, if you're looking at it from Tyler Buchner's standpoint, it's better to win the starting role. I mean, yeah, you learn on the job, man. I mean, and we would be fooling ourselves if we said he didn't look like a completely different quarterback in the Gator Bowl than he did in his 2 starts at the beginning of the season. There was some apprehension. He didn't look super duper confident in those 2 starts. Completely opposite demeanor from a mental standpoint in the Gator Bowl for Tyler Buchner, in my opinion. So, I mean, he's already taken a huge step, even though he wasn't playing. I think he could take that next step, whether he's playing or whether he's not, in 23, right? I think and I realize the question is what's better for Buchner. I think we also have to talk about what's better for Notre Dame, you know? And I think in the long run, Tyler Buchner could make a lot of strides sitting on the bench or having a package or whatever, during 23 and then becoming the full-time starter in 24. And I think that's going to be the pitch by Marcus Freeman and Tommy Rees to keep him around. It's a legitimate pitch.
Yeah, and that's Jason has the question: if Hartman does win, does Buchner have his packages like with Cone? I would think that there are going to be packages, and like it could. I would think that'll be expanded as well, since we know that the guy can throw now, and he's not just a runner. Like, to me, red zone would make the most sense. Like we saw when Ian Book kind of got his start against Brandon Wimbush, we saw him coming in. What did Brian Kelly call it? Did he call it the white zone or the blue zone or something?
Yeah, it was
like that. It was I know it was like loading and unloading and all those different things. And it's like, but to me, a more mobile quarterback makes more sense down in the red zone.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, just look at the 2 touchdowns that Buchner scored in the Gator Bowl.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. And I think, and Brian and I talked about this in one of our shows last week, you have a package for Tyler Buchner, but it's a very understood, hey, when we get into this situation, Tyler's going in. It's not, we're going to bring Tyler in for a spark because Sam's not doing a good job. Like, that creates issues. That I don't like that. I think it's, hey, once we get inside the 30, once we get inside the 20, whatever it happens to be, whatever the package is, it needs to be understood by everybody. Sam, Tyler, the offense, everybody. Hey, when we get here, Tyler's going in.
This is going to happen.
And it's just understood. And everybody's on board. That's the offense. That's what we do. I think they need to do a better job of defining what that is. If they can do that, it'll work great. And the offense will be even better.
Well, and I would think that the conversation has been had with Sam Hartman that not only you're coming here for yourself and to help us win and all these things, but you're also here to help mentor these young quarterbacks from Tyler Buchner and Minchie and Angeli and on down the line. That's part of the job. It's not just about you getting better and preparing for the draft, but you're here to help make these younger guys better quarterbacks as well. So, and there is a relationship with the Rees family that goes a long way back from when Tommy's dad was down there at Wake Forest. So, I think that there had to be some assurances. I would have to think there would have to be some assurances along those lines. From Steve, have either of you heard if there's going to be any coaching changes? Will Notre Dame get a quarterback coach?
Well, they have a quarterback coach. His name is Tommy Rees. And the only way that they get a new quarterback's coach is if they fire Tommy Rees, and that's not going to happen. So, no, there's not that regard. That's not going to change.
I think the only changes on this staff are going to happen if, like, the Lance Taylor and John McNulty situations come up. Like, someone gets a job to go be a coordinator or, gets hired to go wherever, some kind of promotion. I think that's the only way that any coaching changes are made. I don't think Marcus Freeman's going to make any changes this year. And, I realize there are some deficiencies, but Marcus Freeman, first year head coach or not, he's got to have a much better idea of just how severe he thinks those deficiencies are. And he can put those guys on alert. It's like, look, this has got to be better next year. And this is where whether it's recruiting or development or a combination of the two, all of the above, whatever, that's going to be something to watch with Marcus Freeman as well, because as we know, too much loyalty got in the way for the previous head coach in terms of keeping guys on too long. How is Marcus Freeman going to year in and year out evaluate his coaches? And, how willing is he going to be to make changes if everyone can see that there is a glaring need to make a change? Whereas the other guy waited too long a couple times.
Well, and that's actually a really good point because, we always gave Brian Kelly a hard time about hiring his friends and, that whole thing. There's some good friends on this staff, or at least friendly, that, with Marcus Freeman from his previous days of coaching. Mason, obviously came from Cincinnati. Mike Mickens, they've been friends forever, right? James Laurinaitis is a friend. I mean, he came for a visit and ended up getting on the staff. I mean, so those three guys in particular. Now, I would say, one is an analyst, so we can't really analyze how he was effective with this team. I mean, yes, he had something to do with the linebackers. That could be a ding. But the other two guys, they're arguably two of the best assistant coaches on the staff, right? So he hasn't walked into the scenario of, oh man, my friend is doing a terrible job. What do I do? So he hasn't had to deal with that yet because his friends are doing a fantastic job up to this point. It's the other coaches that, not all of them, obviously, but there's the ones that we have issues with. Yeah. They're not necessarily friends beforehand, but they have connections, whatever. So it's going to be interesting to see how he handles this staff, more so for me 12 months from now, not this year. I mean, it's been 1 year. I think he wants as much continuity as he can get unless there was a glaring problem.
There's a learning curve for Marcus Freeman.
Absolutely.
So if there's a learning curve for Marcus Freeman, there has to be one for the guys that he hired to his staff as well. And I don't think that you can just all of a sudden you're making snap changes because a couple things didn't go the way everyone wanted. Again, Marcus Freeman is closer to the situation, and that can work both ways because of what you're talking about, pre-existing relationships and all that kind of stuff, that kind of closeness. But he's also there every day, and he's sitting in these rooms with these guys and going through practice. So he knows what needs to improve and what doesn't. And I would have to think that a guy who's able to self-evaluate so much is going to be able to have those conversations, with the guys on his staff. And again, give them the bullet points. Like, this is what we need to do, between now and late August, early September, whatever the date is. I'm not even sure what the date is for Ireland, right? It's 0 week, right?
It's August 26th. I think that's off the top of my head. So it's week 0 for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because week 1, they've got Tennessee State or whatever team that is. I can't remember the name. I've heard Jackson State so many times over the last 3 months. Okay, there you go.
It's the Eddie George.
Yes.
Team.
Whatever team Eddie George is the head coach of.
That's right. That's right. Irish Chi-Town, we're going to save Super Bowl and playoff predictions for Friday's show, since we're going into playoff weekend Friday. So the rapid fire show with Vince and Jesse and I we'll hit some of that on Friday.
So come on back, baby. Come on back for some Friday fire.
It's a good question, though, but saving it for the weekend. Let's see. There were a couple others. There's one or two others that we're going to change.
I wasn't ready to make those calls yet.
Well.
I got to do a little more studying on the NFL matchups and all that stuff.
Benjamin, a relatively new questionnaire, I believe. Welcome, Benjamin, if this is your first question on the show. I don't remember seeing that last name very often. But with the team pushing for a playoff run, what changes do you think the Irish need to make?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
Very loaded.
Well, they're in the midst of making some of the changes that I think they needed to address. The quarterback room was one. I think the safety position was one. They brought in somebody, obviously. I think the interior of the defensive line is an area that if they can supplement in the portal, then they need to do that. I think there needs to be some added influence in defensive line recruiting. That would be nice. I would like that. If you think of anything, Sean, go ahead and jump in. I'm kind of going through like my mental list of things I'd like to see in the offseason.
Going down the checklist.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing just starts with the front seven of the defense.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very confident in the secondary. I'm very confident in the offensive line. I'm very confident in the wide receivers. I'm very confident in the quarterback. I'm, even very confident with a relatively inexperienced group of tight ends because that unit has done so well traditionally, and they got to play behind and work with Michael Mayer. Raridan was doing great before he got injured, and Mitchell Evans, we saw good things from him. We saw good things from Holden Stays as well. So I'm confident there. Biggest question on offense is going to be the receivers, but I'm willing to say with an experienced quarterback who knows how to throw to guys downfield and is so experienced just with everything, the routes and reading defenses and just the whole thing. Now, again, I'm not telling you the guy is going to be perfect, but even losing an All-American like Michael Mayer, I think that the offense is going to be more wide open next year. And I think that's big as well, because we had the conversation last week. Drew Tranquil tweeted it after the semifinal weekend that in college football, offense wins championships. And look at the scores of the two semifinals and look at what Georgia put up. You better be able to score some points. And so that's where this team has to become much more consistent next year. And I think they can. There's definitely going to be some talent in that wide receiver room. There's also a lot of relative inexperience, but I think adding the veteran quarterback like you're going to have, and with the running game and the offensive line they're going to have, I think it can be more explosive and much more diverse than what we saw this year. So those are the two biggest things to me: defensively, front seven, and just more diversity in the offense. But I think because of what they're adding at the quarterback position with all that experience, they can be more diverse.
I agree completely. And that was one of the things. So it's not like a specific position for me that needs to make changes or whatever. And I think it's more of a Tommy Rees, adapting his offense to the personnel, right?
Yes.
And so, we talked about this a little bit on Monday, going from a predominantly 12 personnel to more of a 21 personnel, because again, you can do a lot of the same concepts out of that, but in matchups that will benefit you even more. If I'm talking about a specific position, the running back position is going to be absolutely loaded if it doesn't change between now and the end of August, right? So what are they going to do with Chris Tyree? Are they going to just not use him like they did this year? Or is he going to become a part of this offense? I think they're wasting their time if they don't, right? So, 21 personnel, man, that needs to, in my opinion, that needs to be your base, right? Just like 12 personnel used to be
I agree.
Notre Dame's base.
But I keep going back to Chris Tyree and having a player with that kind of explosiveness and just suddenness that Chris Tyree has. Like I said, this year it was obvious that offensively the running backs and the tight ends were the two positions of strength in terms of the the skill, much more so than the wide receiver group. And obviously the quarterback got locked in on Michael Mayer too much, and that held him back in some ways. So even though you're going to lose an All-American caliber tight end, I think that can both benefit the offense, and because of what you're talking about, the running back position, adding who they're, you're going to get JD Price back and you're going to get Jeremiah Love. It's going to be even more loaded and more diverse next year. And so you're going to have an opportunity to get a lot of those guys on the field, obviously assuming everybody stays healthy. So I agree. That's what you've got to do. And the mismatches they can cause with that are just infinite to me because of the explosiveness of a couple of those guys.
And what did we see in the national championship game, for example? We all watched it, right? We saw an immense amount of creativity out of the Georgia offense. They didn't ask Stetson Bennett to just drop back and pick apart the TCU defense. Now, could he have? Probably, but they were rolling them out. They were doing a lot of different things offensively to keep TCU off balance. There's no reason Notre Dame can't do that kind of stuff. None. No reason. So just to see that creativity, to see Tommy Rees grow in an additional year as offensive coordinator with a quarterback who can execute his offense, on a regular basis. He hasn't had that since he's been offensive coordinator. Let's be honest. He hasn't. And our biggest knock on Tommy Rees is, is he trying to do too much with the quarterback? Is he, all of these different things? Well, he's going to either Sam Hartman or Tyler Buchner is going to beat out Sam Hartman, so he'll be just as good, right? He's going to have a quarterback that can execute his offense.
See, this is best case scenario. What we saw this year with the inconsistencies in the offense was the product of Tommy Rees trying to put together both, offense and individual game plans that tried to play to the strengths of an inexperienced quarterback and tried to avoid the weaknesses of the inexperienced quarterbacks, both of them.
Yeah.
And, and like I said, like what we saw in the Gator Bowl was at least a glimpse of what the true sort of idea actually was. You obviously take away the pick sixes,
right. Obviously,
I'm just saying
there was mistakes. Obviously,
that's right.
But he was at least able to execute what the game plan that Tommy Rees had, and the game plan. Look, Tommy Rees has been offensive coordinator for a few years now. He's had Ian Book, he's had Jack Cohn, he's had a couple of games of Tyler Buchner, and he's had Drew Pine. He has not had a complete quarterback ever. Closest one was Jack Cohn. I mean, if we're being honest, and we all had issues with how immobile he was.
Now, that's all fair, but the other side of that coin, and the detractors would say, well, that's because other than Ian Book, who has he developed, right?
That's fine.
Who has he recruited and developed, and
right.
And there's
and the recruiting at quarterback has not been good, right? But Brian said this in one of the shows. Ever since the last head coach left, quarterback recruiting has gotten better. Agree or disagree?
Agree.
So, from what I understand is the quarterback position specifically had to be signed off on by the head coach in previous years.
Because the head coach, with all of his alleged quarterback guru-ness or whatever you want to call it, obviously he had a vision for what he thought it was supposed to be.
And quarterback recruiting wasn't great.
Yeah.
I mean, it just wasn't. And now that he's gone, it has taken a step in the right direction, in my opinion. So, look, Tommy Rees deserves the credit or the knock for not, progressing with those guys. Absolutely. But he's bringing in guys with a higher ceiling and a higher floor since BK's been gone.
Yes.
That alone is going to give him a leg up as a quarterback coach as well. So, I mean, it's twofold. I mean, I'm not saying it's not Tommy Rees's fault by any stretch, right? But
it's a combination of things.
It's a combination.
Again, that's what we start to find out the more time that we have between when Brian Kelly was here and as Marcus Freeman's tenure continues. We'll continue to find out more. We're still seeing a mix, obviously, but you're absolutely right about the recruiting. Just look at the kind of guys they've landed in, these two cycles already.
Right. I just feel like this year in 23, we're going to have a better idea of what Tommy Rees sees for his own offense because he's got a quarterback, I think, that can execute it. But we'll see. I mean, that's what I think is going to happen. Who knows what's actually going to happen?
Yeah. Good point. Chi-Town asking, will IB be in Ireland to cover the Shamrock game, starting with an IB pregame live from Ireland? I was going to bring this up with the boss this week. Have you had any conversations along these lines?
Very little, because I just don't want to be shut down like this early. Like, I don't want to be told no this early, so I haven't really dove into it. But it would be great. I mean, I think that would be awesome. I believe he had told me he's planning on going.
Oh, is he?
Yeah,
okay.
I believe that is accurate. But other than that, I am not 100% sure. But if he is, we got to start the cause. Right?
We haven't had those meetings.
No, we haven't.
No.
But it's probably something we should talk about because it's going to be here before you know it, and it's not going to be an inexpensive trip.
Yeah.
So
we might. I was going to say we might have to have a couple all super chat podcasts to
fund the trip,
crowdsource for that thing. That's right. So if you want your coverage from Ireland, might
need some help with that one.
Right. There's a handful of questions in here I'm saving for rapid fire.
Oh, okay.
By the way, but John, congratulations. He says he hasn't been active due to being a new dad. Congratulations on being a new dad.
Congratulations. Good luck.
Very good. And glad to have you in here tonight as well.
Good luck. That is quite the journey, my friend.
I don't know what that is.
God's Thumbs 22.
Oh, God's Thumbs. Man, the Z's threw me off. Can they get a GA or analyst as a
wingback? We don't have any wingbacks.
What's a WB coach?
Maybe wide receivers, but I don't know why you would say that. I'm gonna go. Well,
or is it supposed
QB?
to be?
Oh, there's a Q right.
W is right next to Q on the keyboard.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. So yeah. So technically, you can get a GA to coach quarterbacks. That is accurate because remember, Tommy Reese's first year, they had not expanded to 10 assistant coaches, and he was a GA, but he was also the quarterback's coach because they brought him in basically a year early. Could they do that? Sure. If you're looking for a top quality quarterbacks coach, and they also brought him in knowing that they were going to be adding that 10th assistant coach the next year. So it's like, hey, you're going to be a GA for 1 year, and then you're going to be a full-time assistant coach, right? You're going to have a hard time bringing in a really good quarterbacks coach for GA pay, which is nothing, essentially. You get to go to class. You get paid, but you get to go to school. I mean, you're going to have a hard time bringing in a really good quarterbacks coach under those restrictions. So could they? Yes. An analyst cannot coach on the field.
Right.
So that's not going to do you any good. They can go over film with you. They can do stuff like that, but they can't.
That's one of the things that Michigan is in trouble for.
Bingo.
Is allegedly using an analyst during practice.
And you can't do that. So that would not work. But yes, technically a GA could do it if that's the route that you wanted to go. Usually is there 2 offense and 2 defense, Sean, or is it 1 and 1? I can never remember what the breakdown is, but I know one always goes with the offensive line. Harry always has a GA with him. Right. Always. And if there's a second one, I'm not 100% sure where he goes or where he goes right now. So.
Yes. That makes sense. Steve wants to know what the main thing is that they need to focus on this spring/season. I mean, we kind of touched on some of it.
Yeah. It's gelling the quarterback. Figuring out who your starting quarterback is going to be a major one. The front 7. I think those are the 2 major spots that they need to focus on. I think the rest will work itself out.
Me too. Sky Shark, all things being equal on both sides. Braxton Bragg versus Emory Upton, Vince. Who you got?
Is it wrong that I have no idea who those people are? Help me out. Do you know who these people are, Sean?
I don't. Did you not star this one? Did I star it?
I don't think I did, but let's see.
Sky Shark?
This is a history question. This is like Civil War stuff, man. I don't know the answer to your question. I can't give a reasonable answer without going in and doing some research. So I apologize. My days of being a history teacher were about 10 years ago. So I'm definitely out of practice. So I apologize, Sky Shark. I don't know the answer. So
I've got to say I'm right there with you.
I looked up Braxton Bragg.
Braxton Bragg sounds familiar, but I can't. Yeah,
it looked like his picture was from the Civil War. So I apologize, man.
Sean Michael wants to know, where would we like to see the Irish in the rankings to start the year? He says he prefers somewhere in the 15 to 20 range and earn it from there.
I think that's a little low, if I'm being honest. I think anywhere from the 10 to 15 range is probably a little bit more accurate, and I think that's fine. I think if you're in that range, you pretty much hold your destiny in your own hands, which I'm totally fine with. If you're, let's say you start, I've seen all these way too early polls and all that, and I've seen Notre Dame anywhere from 7 all the way down to like 14. And I think that's accurate. I think anywhere in that neighborhood is just fine. They don't belong in the top 5 right now. I think they could legitimately be a top 10 team for sure. But if they're in the top 15, they still hold their own destiny in their hands because they're going to have plenty of opportunities. Ohio State, Clemson, they're going to have plenty of USC. They're going to have plenty of opportunities to get where they need to go.
Yeah.
So top 15, I'm good.
I think so as well. Somewhere around 12, I think would be a good starting point. They started off in the top 10 this year. They fell out of the top 25 for a little while. And then, of course, they worked their way back in and were climbing before the loss.
And if they beat USC, they're in a New Year's Six game. I mean,
exactly.
So that tells you how volatile the AP top 25 can be, right? I mean, they were out, they were up, they were out, they were back in, and they were almost in a New Year's Six. One more win.
Exactly. Interesting one from Adam. This is a recruiting sort of theoretical question, so I guess we can, you and I can hit this, with some confidence. I guess. Do we think Notre Dame should try to get into Florida more, kind of like they did with Texas this year?
Always. I think Florida's always been, a hotbed for recruiting. I mean, I believe that they still are. You got IMG Academy down there. Obviously, there's some dudes that are there. But yeah, I mean, I think Florida, Texas, I think Arizona is becoming more of a hotbed for recruiting. A lot of spots south of the Mason-Dixon line, you're going to be in pretty good shape, right? It's not the old days where, Pennsylvania is the cradle of quarterbacks and, things of that nature. I think a lot of the talent is south. And Florida is SEC, ACC country, right? So you want to try to get in there not only to enhance your roster, but to ding the rosters of other schools that you're competing against. I have no problem getting back into Florida. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it either. I think I think that Brian Kelly just kind of decided it was more trouble than it was worth. Just, like it seemed like sort of with the mentality of some of the Florida kids and stuff like that. And then obviously you're competing against a lot of different schools in Florida, but even more than that, you're also still competing with Georgia and Alabama, who are obviously winning, the state of Florida in their recruiting. When you look at the state of where those, the big three in Florida are right now, I still think, Brian Kelly was not wrong when he said that there is a wealth of talent in Georgia, and that's a good state to recruit as well. I just think it depends on, you've got a head coach who's more than willing to get on a plane and fly wherever it takes to get whoever it takes. So if they feel like they've got the right guy in Florida, and that's the guy that they can build a relationship with, I say, go get him. Like what state they happen to be in should not be a detriment.
Agreed.
Or deterrent to what they're trying to do.
That's a really good point. I think Notre Dame is at a place now where they can go wherever they need to go and they can be effective. I mean, you need to identify the top players and who you want. Doesn't matter where they're from. Go get them. You don't necessarily have to have a presence, so to speak, in any of the states. Just go get those guys, But obviously, the more you get from those spots, the better it is, because you can point to, hey, we got so-and-so and look at them, and we got so-and-so and look at them, and, that whole thing. So, yeah, I like that. That's a really good point.
All right, Vince, we've got a lot more questions in the queue that I've been kind of pushing back that I feel like we can get in rapid fire tonight. So we might end up kind of having an even longer rapid fire than usual, because I just feel like, kind of a grab bag of some different, a variety of questions.
You're coming with the heat, by the way.
Yes. So are you ready for rapid fire?
I'm always ready for rapid fire, baby.
Right, baby.
You sent this email a little earlier than usual. At least it felt like it was. It was 11-ish in the
morning.
I
had my doctor's appointment today, so I wanted to make sure that I got them to you, and didn't stiff you, by not letting you know too late in the afternoon. So
I was reading through them, and I was getting a little fired up prior to lunch. Like that's where I was with some of these questions. So I'm ready to go, man. I'm excited.
All right. Okay, so here we go. After watching the college football playoff championship game the other night, would it be acceptable if Notre Dame were to make the playoffs next year, but get smoked the way TCU did?
So does that mean they won their first round game and they get smoked in the national championship game?
I knew you'd ask me to differentiate. Let's just say, yeah, for the sake of art. They get to the national championship game, and then they get smoked by Georgia or whoever it happens.
Well, and the reason I asked for the differentiation is because if they go to the Final Four and they get smoked in the semifinal round like that, they've made no progress. Like that's no progress made.
Well, but you've missed the playoffs the last 2 years. So are we saying because they've already made the playoffs in the past twice
right.
and you lost lopsided games,
yes.
you need to push past that point.
Because the whole point is we think Marcus Freeman can take Notre Dame to that next step. Well, the next step is winning a semifinal game. It's not necessarily winning the national championship. We think that can happen too, but you got to at least win a semifinal game, right? So making the semifinal game is all well and good, but if you get smoked in the Final Four, that's a very disappointing ending to that season. Now, if you win that game, now you're in the national championship. We can have the conversation about what a great season it was and how it's a step in the right direction, and let's see what happens next year, et cetera, et cetera. Now, nobody wants to sit through that blowout, especially if you're a fan of the team that's getting blown out. Exactly. Nobody. And that's going to leave a sour taste in your mouth. But once you get a little bit further removed from it, I'm trying to think of if Notre Dame was in TCU's shoes, right? You get a little bit further away from it. You got a lot to celebrate about that season.
And let's be honest, because it's TCU, nobody's going to care, right? It's right. Like, absolutely. They kind of eat some humble pie for a couple of days, but it's like Georgia is just that good, which when you look at the fact that it's been more than a calendar year since they've lost, what is it, 15, straight this year, plus, 2 straight national championships and all that. And like, it's a loaded Georgia team, by the way. They lost, I think it was like, wasn't it like 15 or 16 guys to the NFL last year? They had a bunch of underclassmen playing this year who are all going to be back next year. So like, that problem ain't going away anytime soon. So if it does end up being Notre Dame and you get there, I realize that sort of philosophies may vary. First and foremost, I said this after the last time they got their butt kicked in the semifinal by Alabama. You don't have a chance to win the championship unless you're in the playoffs. Sure. So if it turns out that you get smoked even in a semifinal, at least you're in the playoff. There are a lot of other teams who would have liked to be there. Now, because you're Notre Dame, and this was my point with TCU, like it'll pass for TCU because they'll still remember this in, a year, 5 years, 10 years. This is still going to be a generational season. And finishing as the national runner-up is still going to be great for TCU because it's going to be, now they're going to have some opportunities probably to do it again, considering Texas and Oklahoma are leaving the Big 12. But at the same time, my point is for TCU, it's still a great thing. If you're Notre Dame, you're going to eat it a lot more because we all know that people love to hate Notre Dame and the lightning rod and the whole thing. So like even during the championship game the other night when they brought up, well, Notre Dame doesn't, or what was it? This is, taking on the feel of the Notre Dame or something like
they brought it up, even though it was 10 years ago, 11 years ago or whatever, 10 years ago. Right. They brought it up.
And that's my point. Because it's Notre Dame, people will still talk about it years from now. And that's Notre Dame does need to get past that stigma. So like just what you said, if they can at least win a semifinal and then maybe you lose a lopsided game in the national championship, I would definitely take that. Getting to the national championship.
Yes, I would too, because there's a lot of spin, and it wouldn't even be spin. It would be reality that they've taken a step that they hadn't taken before. If they win that semifinal game, Notre Dame's never won a semifinal game, and frankly, they haven't been close, right? So if they can win that, and yes, if they get smoked in the finals, okay, would suck, would be horrible, be the worst post-game show ever, but it would still, like I said,
still be there.
You're still there. You're still in the championship. So, and it would be even better than 2012 because you didn't have to win a semifinal game to get there. You're automatically just put in that game based on what you did in the regular season, but you were put in that game. I feel like now, at least in the Final Four, you have to earn it. You have to earn a trip to the finals.
Yeah. And you're going to have to earn it even more when it expands.
Yeah, no doubt. So, no doubt. Playoffs in December in South Bend. Let's go.
Okay, Vince. So, we've heard that Notre Dame needs to upgrade the Goog, in facilities for football. It's stuff that's been, and obviously Brian Kelly, wanted the personal chefs and, whatever over there. My question is, considering the current climate with NIL, the proliferation of NIL, is the money better spent on facility upgrades, NIL, or even something else beyond that? Like if you're able to to come up with that kind of millions of dollars, what is it best spent on right now?
I think because I just don't see Notre Dame jumping in the deep end with NIL. I just don't see it, right? They've got the money to do it if they wanted to, but I just don't see them doing it. And I think that's the reality that we have to live in. So maybe this is a cop-out answer, but I think because of that, you dump it all into facilities and you dump it all into, making the Notre Dame athletic facilities top notch. I really do. I think they are lacking. I mean, when I was sitting around over Christmas break and I was watching, Dion take his tour of Colorado, and they were in the football facility and they went into the training facility, and I was like, that's better than Notre Dame's. Like, they got some serious stuff going on there. The locker room is beautiful. Like, you can't be trailing Colorado. You know what I mean? You've got to upgrade the facilities and continue to upgrade the facilities. Now, I'm not saying that, Notre Dame players are going on, into the high school training room or whatever. I mean, their facilities are nice, but they're trailing a lot of schools out there, and they need to step it up.
The problem is with facilities, just as we found out when they've made upgrades in the past, as soon as you build these things, they become outdated very quickly.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
And so it's kind of you're always on the hamster wheel trying to improve the facilities. And like you said, they're not going to be necessarily upfront with the NFL or with the NIL, but that doesn't mean you can't have a specific NIL fund, just like there are NIL opportunities like we've talked about. That doesn't mean you can't still have a fund that says, look, we're not giving you a dime up front, but we've got, there are all these different schools right now. Like Indiana even has, like,
well, they do have that. It's the Fund by Brady Quinn. I mean, they do have that.
Well, but it's different. And I'm saying you can't, too much is never enough, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Like, so maybe there's something there already, but you can never have enough is what I'm saying.
Well, and they need
because
to,
again, even though you're not going to give anything up front, you can say, hey, look, we've got this sitting here.
They need to publicize the fund, the fund. That's what it's called. FUND. They need to publicize it and say to donors, hey, if you want to donate, go to this. Like, they've already said that they endorse it or whatever, but be public about it. Like, hey, go ahead and do this. And then that thing can just explode. And then you don't even have to worry about it. It's not even a university funded thing. It's obviously done by donors and all that. They need to publicize that. If they publicize that, then they're going to be fine.
I saw Nate Laszewski and Cormac Ryan doing a commercial on TV.
Really?
The other night. Yeah.
Wow. What was it for?
It was a lot of
jokes.
It was a local car wash establishment.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I thought that was interesting. That was the first time I had seen that commercial. Yeah. So like there's an opportunity that's there. But like, we heard that Michael Mayer was pretty well taken care of in terms of NIL this year, but like, what was he doing? Like it feels like
know.
Do they not want to publicize that because they, like, is there kind of a tug of war in terms of, like it's there, but we don't really want to you would think that they would want to publicize it so that word like that gets to recruits. So recruits know, it's there, there's still a lot there for me, that kind of thing. Like, but it feels like there are athletes who are, in on NIL, but it's not necessarily very well publicized.
Yeah.
The fact that they're getting it.
Agreed. I mean, they publicize it to the athletes that they want, but it's not publicized to like us at all. And I know like Sean and Brian, I think they have a better idea of what kids are making and what they're doing, but you and I have no idea, and most of the people in the chat have no idea. And I know these guys are getting compensated. I know they're making money. I have no idea. I could not even logistically put a number to it because I don't know. I don't know. So it's just not, you're right. It is not out there publicly. And I feel like it would not hurt them to do that.
I agree. So Kirk Herbstreit says he expects Penn State to be a regular in the playoffs once the field expands to 12 teams. Which team are you more confident will be in the playoffs more regularly, Penn State or Southern Cal?
That's easy. Southern Cal, because Southern Cal has an opportunity to be the best or at worst the second best team in the Pac-12 every year. I don't know that Penn State's ever going to be better than the third best team in the Big Ten. And consistently having 3 Big Ten teams in the 12-team playoff, I think it's going to be difficult. I mean, maybe that happens every year. Maybe I'm mistaken. But I think 3 teams from the Big Ten every year is going to be really, really difficult. And if you compare it to USC, I think they're going to have an opportunity to either win their conference or be the second team almost every year. And I think that's a better avenue to get in than being the third best team in the conference.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, 3 from the Big Ten is going to be tough, especially when you're going to be battling with 3 to 4 from the SEC
right.
on any given year. I mean,
And
that's 7 out of 12 spots right there potentially, and you still have to have the automatic bids for the conference champions and all that stuff. So it's like, I don't know if he was accounting for the fact that USC was going to be coming in, and that's why I asked the question between USC and Penn State. But I tend to agree with you. I think the recruiting is going to be better. I think they've got a better coach at USC. So I think that USC moving to the Big Ten is going to be the more regular as well. And what's going to happen with Michigan is largely going to depend on what happens with Jim Harbaugh. Does he end up staying there? Does he go to the NFL?
Oh, yeah, good point.
There's all these NFL teams want him right now.
And
or at least they're interviewing him.
God's thumb says, look how highly they regarded Penn State this year. Yeah, they did. But who was regarded higher? USC. And the question was Penn State or USC?
Well, see, the thing with Penn State is, they win all their games with the exception of Michigan and Ohio State. So, like, if you're playing in the Big Ten and those are the games that you're losing regularly.
That's a good point. That's a really good point by Josh.
No, USC won't be, and that's what I was saying. USC,
Fair enough. I didn't even think about that, so that's on me, Josh. You are 100% right. I'm sure that's why he said USC or Penn State, because they're going to be in the same conference.
Exactly.
So my answer doesn't even make sense, and that's awesome.
But I still think USC is going to recruit better and have a better coach, and I think that they'll have a better chance.
I agree.
And again, if Penn State is losing to Ohio State and Michigan every year, once it expands, I think that gets held against them. You're going to have to start winning one of those games at some point.
Yeah.
Especially when you're adding USC to them, and you're going to have to play, the conference is going to be so big, who knows who's going to be playing who year in and year out.
For sure.
If they go to one, conference and you're rotating opponents and all that kind of stuff, they probably won't be playing Ohio State and Michigan every year.
Right.
So maybe that helps them out. But I still think USC has the better chance as well.
I do too. I just think they're going to be better at recruiting, and from a head-to-head matchup, I just think USC. And plus, USC is going to get a lot of love from people because of where they are, who their head coach is. I mean, yes, the committee gave a lot of love to Penn State. I get that. Just wait. Just wait for how much love USC is going to get when they're in the Big Ten.
People like that LA glitz and all that stuff, and they like the kind of the reemergence of USC.
That's a thing. It's a thing.
Yep. I'll be curious to see kind of like how playing a couple November games a year out in this part of the country. They'll get to host some games as well, but they're gonna have to come out here. They're
not all of them
here. That's right. They're going to have to play at least 2 games a year, I would think, out here in the Midwest someplace.
I wouldn't mind one of those games being in South Bend, by the way, but we'll see.
You know what? I'm going to save this NFL question for Friday when Jesse was with us, since we still have a slew of other topics that are starred up here that I think are good topics. One of the things that people want to talk about is the Under Armour contract, and whether or not Notre Dame will stick with Under Armour long term. And another question from Sean: with the Under Armour contract set to expire after 24, which brand do you like them to get a deal with, and which one do you think they end up with? Big deal for recruits.
Number one, I don't think
I'm just going to go New Balance. I'm going to push all my money in on New Balance.
Just bought some New Balance the other day.
I'm kidding.
My son told me that they were in, so I bought some.
New Balance baseball shoes are good shoes.
They are.
But other than that, yeah.
Number one, I don't think it's a big deal for recruits. I think people make a bigger deal out of that than it really is. And that's my opinion. That's what I think. That's one of the, if you're ranking in order the importance of why a kid goes to a school, I just don't see, well, they're a Nike school, I'm going there. Like, I just don't think that's really a thing.
Like, I think that if you're going to, more like a mid-tier school and one is Adidas and one is Nike, as popular as Nike can be, or one is Under Armour and one is Nike, maybe that has more sway there. Yeah. But I agree. Is it a factor to at least some extent?
Sure.
It probably is. But I think that winning championships, chance to get to the NFL, those, and depending on what school you're talking about, the education as well, I think that those are all bigger factors than what brand your team is wearing.
100%. So that's that part of the question. Where do I think they're going to go? I mean, if they go away from Under Armour, they got two options. It's Adidas or Nike. Nike obviously has a big corner on the market, as opposed to Adidas. Adidas is a small fish compared to Nike. So, I mean, I guess if you're playing the odds, you would say Nike. I know that that's going to tick off a lot of people. I'm not saying that's my preference. My preference is, though, that they do not do the Jumpman brand. I would be very upset if they go to the Jumpman brand. I think that's ridiculous that the Jumpman brand is a football brand. It's a basketball brand. That if it's going to be Nike, so be it, whatever. It doesn't bother me. I know it bothers a lot of other people, but I really don't want them to go with the Jumpman brand.
Yeah. It's funny. We're talking about this because, like Steve said, recruits don't give a darn what they wear, especially now with NIL. I think, and you were talking about Deion Sanders. I think Deion and his son have, like, his son has an NIL deal, I believe, with one shoe company that is opposite of whatever Colorado's shoe company.
I think Colorado's Nike. I think
you're right. Look, I realize people have anti-Nike stuff, and that's that's your prerogative.
Yep.
That's fine. But younger kids, high percentage of them tend to love the Nike.
They do.
And I can tell you this, like the Under Armour stuff itself, I like the Under Armour apparel, and there are even some Under Armour shoes that look good. But I can tell you that many of the players at Notre Dame do not like the Under Armour shoes at all. Like the actual, not just the look of the shoes, but like the comfort of the shoes, the way they actually feel when you have to play. And that is the biggest deal to me, is, are they actually functional shoes? And I think that has to be considered in all this.
Sure.
I don't know how much that matters, like to the people, one of the things that Jack Swarbrick talked about when they did this deal with Under Armour was all this performance tech and, all these, different things that were supposed to help the Notre Dame athletes. The shoes are not good shoes. I'm sorry. I have firsthand information on what the people who actually wear the shoes think about the shoes. They don't like,
and you're not just talking about football, I would imagine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that goes a long way. Like, I think you need to, if you're going to do this right, I think you need to have a representative from all the sports, at least one, and you need to talk to them about it. Now, is it all about the money? Money's going to be a big part of it. There's no doubt about that. I just, of all the, and I could really care less, to be honest with you, what brand Notre Dame goes with. Doesn't matter to me. I literally have all three major brands in my closet. I do. But I can also tell you.
Me too, actually, now that you mention it.
See, there you go. So it doesn't matter to me. I just don't want them to go Jumpman. I just think it's stupid. I think it's ridiculous. And I get that that's their elite version of Nike, and that's who they want Notre Dame to be. I just don't like it. I think it's stupid. But, I know kids like Nike. That when I got new uniforms for my baseball team, and I got Nike hats, and I got Nike, uniforms, they were fired up because it was Nike. It was name brand.
Personally, I think Adidas has a lot of good stuff. I don't know if they would go back to Adidas after leaving Adidas last time, but Adidas was actually, I've had this conversation with some people as well. Like Adidas was getting some really, good looking shoes when Notre Dame decided to go
away
to Under Armour, and, like we've talked about the uniforms as well. And that's part of this deal as well, because they're providing the uniforms, and people were asking who decides on the color of the pants and all that stuff. And I don't know exactly where that comes from, like the mustard pants and all that, but the blue number on green jerseys that they wore as the alternate this year has got to go. Like it needs to be a gold/yellow, whatever, on a green jersey. And that's part of the apparel as well. But
yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know where they'll go. Money is obviously going to play a big part in this.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the whole decision is going to come down to money or not, or like you said, if they actually go to the people who have to wear the shoes and uniforms and stuff.
You would think they would do that. That would make sense to me, but who knows?
Yeah. Another basketball question from Decaf 18. What are the chances we see a change at head coach for the men's basketball program? I mean,
if a scale of 1 to 10, it's like a 2, because I don't think he's leaving unless he decides he's leaving. I think it's just gotten to that point with Notre Dame. It was kind of to that point with Brian Kelly. He wasn't going to leave until he decided he was time for him to leave. Now I think we're all, most people are happy that he did, but
again, I think money's going to talk, because I think was it yesterday? Yeah, I think it was when Jesse and I were on here. It was about 10 years ago, before the 2 runs to the Elite 8. And there were some people I knew who were connected, and there was kind of a fire. I don't know if there was necessarily a fire put to Mike Bray, but the conversation was going on that men's basketball needed to be much more of a revenue generator than what it was. And now when you get to the Elite 8, that, especially in back-to-back years, that buys you a lot of time. But we're like 5 or 6 years later now.
Sure.
And
it's
with a season like this, we're seeing much declining attendance. They never have a good non-conference home schedule, to begin with. And so then when you get to the ACC and you're playing like this, the place was half full last night for a 1-point win over the next worst team in the ACC,
who hadn't won in Notre Dame since 1990.
Yeah. I just think money's going to talk at some point. If they decide that they're past the point where, like, again, like men's basketball, they charge a pretty premium price for those tickets still. And if you want to sell those tickets and actually make money on that thing, you got to put some butts in the seat. And at some point, I think that's going to start talking. So I don't know how close they are to that point yet, but they're obviously, we hear from the fans, there are a lot of people who are fed up and frustrated with it right now.
And men's tickets are not tough to get. They're giving them away, folks. Giving them away.
Yep. That is right. From Shannon, with college baseball right around the corner, do you see the Irish taking another special run to the College World Series, or will they take a step back? There's a lot of talent. I think keeping Findlay on the pitching staff was good. A really big move. He was a freshman All-American last year, and they've got, a couple, they lost some guys, but they've got some key pieces back. What the previous coach did was, it was like he had such a specific plan, and that was, I mean, he was a special coach, I think, Link Jarrett, and that's why he ended up with that job at Florida State. And to go from a program that wasn't even making the NCAA tournament prior to him getting here to super regional and 1 win away from the World Series in his first, his first NCAA tournament, because COVID canceled the first season, and then getting to the College World Series in year 2. I want to see what this new coach, Sean Stifler, is all about. Like talking to him after he got the job, there's some specifics to the way he does things as well. And I like, a lot of the things that he's talking about in terms of, being able to manufacture runs and, aggression. And there's some similarities, I think, to Link Jarrett. But I think at the very least, if you're in the NCAA tournament, I realize, everyone wants to get to the College World Series, but get back to the tournament this year, see what this guy is all about, because the ACC is still tough year in and year out. We found that out for a lot of years before Link Jarrett showed up.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it has every possibility of being special, but again, it's difficult to recreate kind of what they had going last year. I mean, that's not an easy thing to recreate, and you're going to have to give Coach Stifler some time to get his feet underneath him. I realize there's going to be a lot of expectations because there's a lot of talent, but it's going to take a minute. I mean, now they've got a very, very favorable schedule, I think, in the preseason and moving forward. They don't go to Texas or anything.
They play a lot of 3 games. I was looking at their schedule. They play like a lot of 3-game series. And look, it's the coach's prerogative how he wants to set up the scheduling. But, like one of the things that when Maneri was here that he used to tell me is like they would go south. They wouldn't play a 3-game series like that because for RPI credits and stuff like that, if you win one game and then lose one, it's obviously a split, but you still get some credit for RPI. But if you lose 2 out of 3, you don't get any credit for that one win. So you've got to make sure you win all those series when you go south like that. And so it's going to be really interesting to see, again, a team from the north go down there, play some of these southern schools right away who have been able to get outside and practice and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, everything about Sean Stifler says he's a good coach too. That's why they hired him. I like, just like Link Jarrett, you can kind of see some no nonsense with him, but he's got a very, specific approach as well. And he's just got to implement his system now. But, again, like part of what made Link Jarrett so good was he had a very specific system, and that's what got him there. So will there be, any drop off or any, sort of adjustment period for some of these guys to get used to some of that kind of stuff?
Some very interesting midweek games as I'm trifling through the schedule here. It's going to be like they play home and away with Michigan State, but the home game is April 11th and the away game is April 25th. So it's separated by like 2 weeks. And that leads right into the return with Florida State coming to Frank Eck Stadium on the 28th of April. So we need to figure out how we can call some of these games. That's what needs to happen. I'll just say it.
Stifler was from VCU is where he came from. VCU, Virginia Commonwealth. So had a lot of success down there as well. Salty, true or false? Notre Dame's in-stadium concessions should sell beer at games. Now, it doesn't affect us one way or the other because we can't be there, but there are enough other places selling beer right now. I say, why not? You're getting loaded when you're tailgating in the parking lot.
And they do it for the concerts.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not like they haven't done it in Notre Dame Stadium. They just don't do it for the game, which at this point, I think is ridiculous. I mean, at this, come on.
With technology, it seems like there's an easy solution to this. Like you get your ticket, and obviously, if you're of age, they scan your ticket from your phone. Like in that barcode there, you could put like a limit of like 3 to 4 beverages. So like every time you go buy a beverage, you've got to have your phone scanned.
Sure,
you know what I mean. So like
ticket.
Right, so that at least you're saying, okay, we'll sell it, but we're not just going to let people get sloppy in here. That kind of thing. So
I'd be fine with it.
I say why not?
And I just don't. Yes, you're going to have some.
I mean, they did it for the Winter Classic game. A few years ago. Even though they ran out.
You're not going to have. Look, if somebody wants to get sloppy, they're going to be sloppy when they walk in the stadium already. I mean, it's just. I don't know what they're trying to prevent. I guess is my point.
Right.
I spent a lot of time in the student section
again,
at Notre Dame
you're allowing
Stadium.
everyone to stay out there in that parking lot as long as they want, especially if it's a night game and drink and do as many. Like there are times some of those night games, man, it's like I'm walking in and there are already people, who need some help off the ground.
I spent 2 years in the student section at Notre Dame, and plenty of people were imbibing, you know what I mean? And so that not having it in the stadium is just like, I don't know. It's just a lost opportunity, lost revenue stream, really.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Eric. Thanks for being here on your birthday. Glad to have you. Milton, I just saw a super chat from Milton come in. Saban's face to Pollock's comment made you feel.
I'll let you answer this one because I haven't seen it.
We talked about this last night. Milton wasn't here. It was priceless, man. Like,
because I know he said something about Georgia's running the show or something like that.
Yeah. And Saban's sitting 2 feet from him. And I thought the fact that Pollock was willing to say it with Nick Saban sitting right there. And like, Jesse last night went on and on about all the success that Nick Saban's had. And obviously he's had a lot of success.
Of course.
But Georgia's won 2 national championships now. They were 1.5 away from finish off their second straight national championship. Right now, Georgia is running the sport. Now, probably lit a fire that the rest of the college football world doesn't need under Nick Saban, but Saban's face, man, it was one to behold. I think you need to Google that.
Okay.
And,
I've heard a lot about it
because Nick Saban was not you could tell he wasn't very happy to hear it. I was really surprised that he kind of stayed as silent as he did and not respond to it. But really, what was he going to say at that point? Because again, Georgia's won 2 in a row now, and he lost in the last one to him.
So. And Pollock's a Georgia grad. I mean, of course he's going to be all hopped up and excited, and he's only going to be so professional, okay? But nothing he said, from what I understand, is wrong. They won 2 back-to-back national championships. That hasn't happened in a while, and touche to them. And it wasn't close. That game was over. I saw a video of Georgia players eating hot wings on the sideline, during the game. It's like, yep, that game was over. That game was over.
They need to sell beer down on the sidelines.
Seriously.
Tyler wants to know what I think about the Cowboys' chances to beat Tom Brady and the Bucs, scale of 1 to 10. I'm at least encouraged right now because there was news today that some key injured guys, Tyler Biadasz, the center, who's been out a little bit, and Leighton Vander Esch, who's been out even longer, the middle linebacker, they're at least practicing this week, so they could be back for Monday night. And the thing with Biadasz is, and I don't want to go into a whole bunch of detail and make a bunch of excuses, but with him being out, they put a backup center in, and they've essentially tried to keep their remaining best 5 offensive linemen, but they've had to play, like the shell game. Like Zach Martin is the only guy at right guard who has stayed in place. They've flip-flopped all these other guys around, so the line has, not been optimal because of that. And again, I'm not trying to make a bunch of excuses, but I'll just say 6. I think they've at least got a little bit, but they're a better team, but it's still Tom Brady. They're a better team that's not playing like a better team right now, and they got to go on the road and play Tom Brady. So I'll give them a little bit better than average, but to be quite honest, I hope my wife sets up a concession stand in the living room and sells me cocktails Monday night, because I'm probably going to need it to keep myself medicated.
I give it a 7. Go Cowboys.
Okay. You're a little bit higher.
I am, because I think I know we've probably said this in the past and it hasn't been the playoffs, but I just feel like Tom Brady might have hit his peak at this point. I mean, he has looked his age, or at least older, over this whole season. And I realize he's got a lot of crap going on off the field, and that definitely takes a toll. And I realize he'll game it up when it's the playoffs. But I just feel like the Cowboys, this is their time. This is their opportunity, at least versus the Buccaneers.
Yeah. And, Mike saying, Robert Hainsey playing for the Buccaneers at center this year. Hope he has improved. And, I don't know. Like, the thing with the Buccaneers is they can make you play ugly, and they'll make you play ugly for a full game. And then with about 4 minutes to go, Tom Brady gets the ball in his hands. Now they're 7-9. So it's not exactly like they've lit the world on fire by any means. But Dallas has played ugly, and Tampa can make you play ugly. And Tampa has Tom Brady, whether he looks, and I agree, he looks like he's on his last legs. But, like if it came down to 2 minutes between Dak and Brady, I would take Brady. So, champion or starter? Super chat from God's Thumbs 22. I'm assuming he's talking about a
like apparel.
You like apparel type stuff. I guess I'd go with champion. They're both very 80s at this point. So I don't think anyone probably wants anything to do with either of those brands.
Yeah, I mean, I like starter. I had a starter jacket when I was in middle school, so
Yeah.
I'll go with starter just to be different.
Yeah. I always thought, I had a couple Champion sweatshirts.
Sure, because that was Notre Dame's brand, right?
Yeah,
so I mean, I had that stuff when I was growing up, no doubt about it. Until they switched to Adidas.
Salty, blackboard or whiteboard?
I mean, does he mean like in the classroom or?
I think like, do you call it a blackboard or a whiteboard? They're all pretty much whiteboards these days, aren't they?
Well, I had a blackboard in my room. What was that? That was when I was at Clay High School, so it wasn't that long ago. 6-7 years ago, I had a blackboard because the new whiteboard that they just drilled in over the blackboard wasn't long enough, so I had like 2 hanging areas of blackboard. But yeah, it was. Let's see. I just call it the board. I don't really call it white or black.
I think John's right. Starter's probably
the
more popular in the 90s, but I remember they were kind of getting started in the late 80s still. That's kind of what I like coming out of high school and into college. That's kind of what I associate the starter brand. With. Like that's when
middle school for me was middle 90s.
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, wasn't there a starter jacket that showed up in Rudy that was like kind of out of place?
It was, like 100% out of place. It was when
dated, like
he was looking for tickets on the outside of the stadium, and there was a kid wearing a starter jacket. I was like,
exactly.
Exactly.
And to tell you what, we've talked about this before. I think we're going to have to line up like a series of movies for the summer, and this is the 30th anniversary of Rudy coming out.
Shut up. Is it that old?
It is.
Wow.
So we're going to have to do a Rudy podcast and probably like Friday Night Lights, and we can take some nominations for others.
Let's go.
We can do the movie podcast this summer since things will be a little bit later.
Those could be our Fridays, potentially.
Love it. I love it. Although we might have to make Jesse watch things that he hasn't watched before.
Yeah. I think that's the ones we hit first.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right, a lot of great questions tonight. Definitely appreciate it. Rudy 2 is coming soon. What would that even look like?
Him on his speaking engagements.
Here's my question. Do you know, did they film anything at Mishawaka?
I don't think so.
I was thinking like maybe some of the early, like the practice high school scenes might have been look like it could
have to go back and look.
Area.
I'm going to have to go back and look because I mean, I know everything about Mishawaka as far as, their what it looks like, right? So I'll have to go back and see. Now I got to go watch the movie. It's got to happen.
Like that hurts you.
I know.
All right, well, hit the like button if you would. I don't even think we asked anybody to hit the like button.
Do it
tonight. I'm going to be off tomorrow. There's going to be a show. I think Jesse and Ryan are doing a show tomorrow. I think there's going to be kind of some changes to Thursday because of my women's basketball schedule. I'm basically going to be gone every Thursday from now until basketball season ends.
Pretty much.
As women play on Thursdays.
Thursday, Sunday.
Yes. But we will be here on Friday at 5:00 for the special rapid fire with Vince and Jesse.
Boom.
And I. So,
boom.
And we've got, you know what, Salty? That's a good question. What kind of flicks hasn't Jesse seen? Like,
probably the older ones. I mean,
I guess I sort of assumed that Living with Me, he had seen more than he has seen, but like we were talking about, like he has not seen the Lethal Weapon movies, for example. And that baffled me that like he lives here, but like he's seen Saving Private Ryan and Braveheart and those kind of things.
Okay.
But he hadn't seen the Lethal Weapons.
Huh.
So I don't know.
Has he seen Vision Quest?
I don't think he has.
See?
I know. It's a real ball drop on my part. All right, we will talk to you Friday. Appreciate you being here. And again, hit the like button, subscribe, rate, and review. We'll talk to you then. IB Nation Sports Talk.